read just a hair of the article. A total of 94 U.S. banks are at significant risk of experiencing bank runs by uninsured depositors if they show financial weakness, according to a new report. It says here, an analysis from Florida Atlantic University finds the billion-dollar banks in question, which include 7 of the U.S. financial giants, have all reported a 50% or higher ratio of uninsured deposits to total deposits. Think about that. That means if you have 10 clients that have under 250,000, which is presumably covered by your FDIC coverage, which it's not, but you think it is, that's saying you have another 5 that have over 250,000 in the bank. So Florida Atlantic University finance professor Rebel, I love that name, Rebel A. Cole, says that banks are more vulnerable to liquidity crisis because of uninsured depositors are motivated to withdraw their funds quickly if they perceive any risk to a bank's stability. The first bank failure of the year, meaning this year, Republic First Bank in Pennsylvania, was number 87 on the previous quarter's list with a 51.5% ratio. These banks at question, big banks like Citi and JP Morgan Chase, you may have heard of them. These numbers are higher. These are in worse shape. Says here, all of the banks on this list are at serious risk of a financial run by uninsured depositors should they exhibit any weakness from the commercial real estate exposures or unrealized losses on securities. Although FDIC-insured banks promise up to $250,000 will be protected in the event of a collapse, the FDIC, Federal Reserve, and Treasury Department used a systematic risk exception to make all depositors whole in last year's high-profile bank failures of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic Bank.
Yeah, so right there, of the like 200 billion that was supposed to be lost, I think they only had 5% that was actually covered by the FDIC.
Okay.
For Silicon Valley Bank. When they liquidate their assets, I think their loss should have been about 35 billion, if I remember correctly, for SVB. But we've said on this show, because you like telling people to go on FDIC.gov to see the list. But if you watch from their quarterly reports, nothing actually came from the FDIC.
Where'd it come from?
This article says FDIC, Federal Reserve, and Treasury Department. Well, I can tell you for sure that the money didn't come from the FDIC.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, some of these on this list, I mean, it didn't mention what SVB's was, but it's saying the percent uninsured is like 100%.
Yeah.
Like, how do you have 100% uninsured? That's just insane to me. But it makes sense, because if there's weirdness, you're going to want to pull from these banks first if you know your money's uninsured, but too big to fail. Happened in 2008. It's going to happen again. I mean, bail-ins could definitely happen again, but bail-ins are going to happen for you and I, and they're not happening for these banks.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. And it should be scary to people. And, if we get you scared and then you say, well, now how do we get prepared? Pay down debt. Buy hard assets. Have some physical cash at home. You could even let us introduce you to some conservative financial planning concepts, which we are going to spend an entire hour next week on. We have no articles for next week. Kind of excited in a way. It's going to be 100% money. So, this is frightening. We have told you for 2 years that the commercial real estate, when it starts tipping, which it is now, when you can buy an office building in New York City for 10% of its retail value, that means it's starting now. We told you it was going to start at the end of 2024 and go into 2025 and be pretty much the peak will be over by 2026. So we'll see how we fare. But I can tell you, and I've said for a long time, let's talk about regular people that don't have millions in the bank for a second. If you have $50,000 at, let's use Chase because everybody's heard that name. Let's say you have $50,000 at Chase and you had to go get money right now. today, you need it today for your grandkids or to buy a motorcycle or whatever, you go into Chase and they're probably only going to give you 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, maybe up to 5,000. Let's use 5,000 because the numbers are even. So you'll get 10% of your money. If you're me and you're thinking that there's a problem, you should get that money out of Chase or leave 10% of it there and put $10,000 at 5 different banks, because you're still only going to get 1, 2, 3, maybe up to 5,000 from each of the banks. But let's say you can get 5 out of each bank. You just got half your money back. You got $25,000 in one day versus $5,000 at one bank in one day. So act accordingly. And if you think I'm being too extreme on my thinking about how much trouble the banks are in, you really need to do some research. And you're right, Anthony. I love telling people, if you go to fdic.gov, their own information, when you get your way to statistics at a glance, they have 1.17% insured coverage on our under $250,000 deposits. And then go to the 2010 Dodd-Frank. Remember Bonnie Frank? Go to the 2010 Dodd-Frank regulation and start reading about a bail-in, and then do a little research, and you will be mortified at what's coming with the banks. They have no money.